In the quiet corners of history, there lies a kind of wisdom that our modern world has slowly misplaced. It is not gone entirely, but it hides in forgotten pages, in the dusty shelves of libraries no one visits anymore, in the verses of poets who wrote by candlelight, and in the reflections of thinkers who never knew the sound of a notification. Today, our minds are like crowded marketplaces filled with noise, movement, distraction, and constant urgency. We live in a time where information flows faster than our thoughts, where opinions arrive before understanding, and where the voice of our own soul is drowned out by the relentless chatter of everything else. Yet, there was once a time when people lived in a different rhythm, one that allowed the heart to speak and the mind to listen. This is the wisdom we have lost, not because it was wrong, but because we have forgotten how to keep it alive. The noisy mind is not a new phenomenon. Even in ancient days, people struggled with the endless waves of thought and the restlessness of the human heart. But what they had, which we lack today, was the habit of returning to stillness. They built moments of pause into their lives. The shepherd sitting in the field at night, looking at the stars, learned something about patience without anyone teaching it to him. The monk copying a manuscript by hand discovered discipline, humility, and the joy of single-minded work. The philosopher walking through the streets at dawn understood that truth reveals itself only when you have the space to see it. These were not lessons from books. They were lived experiences. And in our time, when every second feels borrowed and every silence feels awkward, such experiences have become rare treasures. A noisy mind is one that cannot rest even in the absence of external sound. It hums and whirs and demands constant attention. We call this productivity, ambition, or staying connected, but often it is just the mind's way of avoiding itself. If you have ever tried to sit in a quiet room, without your phone, without music, without reading or writing, you will know how quickly the mind rebels. It throws thoughts at you, unfinished tasks, old regrets, imagined scenarios, fears about the future, anything to keep you from being truly still. The ancient wisdom we have lost teaches that this restlessness is not to be feared or avoided. It is to be faced, because when you face the noisy mind without distraction, you begin to understand it. And understanding is the beginning of mastery. One of the forgotten truths is that clarity comes not from thinking harder, but from thinking less. The mind is like a pond. If you keep stirring the water, it remains muddy, but if you let it settle, it becomes clear enough to see the bottom. This is why the sages valued solitude, not the kind of loneliness that crushes the spirit, but the kind of solitude that opens a space for the soul to breathe. They would withdraw from the noise, not forever, but long enough to hear their own thoughts without interference. In that space, they could see what truly mattered, free from the influence of passing trends or popular opinion. Today, we confuse constant interaction with relevance, forgetting that the most important decisions in life often require stepping away from the crowd. The noisy mind is easily manipulated. When your thoughts are restless and scattered, you become vulnerable to every passing message, every marketing trick, every opinion disguised as fact. The ancients understood that a person who cannot control their own mind cannot claim to be truly free. Freedom, they believed, was first and foremost an inner state. You could be chained physically and still be free in spirit, as long as your mind was your own. Conversely, you could live in a land of political liberty and still be a prisoner to your impulses, fears, and distractions. The lost wisdom reminds us that before we seek to master the world, we must master ourselves. There is also a forgotten gentleness in this wisdom. In the rush to optimize every moment, we have lost the art of simply being. We schedule rest as if it is a chore, approach self-care as another item on our to-do list, and even turn meditation into a competition of who can do it better. But real stillness cannot be forced. It is invited. It comes when we stop trying to control every detail and simply allow the mind to slow down on its own. The old philosophers, poets, and mystics understood this. They spoke of walking by the river, listening to the wind in the trees, watching the slow dance of clouds. They did not do these things to post them on social media or to biohack their productivity. They did them because they recognized that the human spirit needs beauty, needs slowness, and needs to remember its connection to the natural world. Our noisy minds have forgotten that listening is a form of wisdom. In conversations, we often listen only to respond, not to understand. In life, we listen only for what agrees with us, not for what challenges us. But the ancients valued the kind of listening that dissolves the ego, that makes you see the world through another's eyes. They knew that when you quiet your inner commentary, you can truly hear not just the words, but the silences between them, the emotions that shape them, the unspoken truths behind them. Such listening is rare now, in part because our inner noise is so loud that it drowns out these subtle layers of meaning. The noisy mind is addicted to certainty. It wants answers immediately, and when it cannot have them, it invents them. This is why we scroll endlessly, why we check the news again and again, why we mistake activity for progress. The lost wisdom teaches patience in the face of the unknown. Life, it says, is not a puzzle to be solved as quickly as possible, but a journey to be walked with awareness. Some answers take years to reveal themselves, and some never arrive at all. In such cases, the wise person does not panic or rush. They accept the mystery as part of existence. Another part of the wisdom we've forgotten is the understanding that the mind's noise is often a signal of deeper needs. Restlessness may be a mask for fear, overthinking may be a shield against pain, and constant distraction may be a way of avoiding grief. The sages were not afraid to look beneath the surface. They would sit with their discomfort, trace its roots, and allow it to teach them something. We, on the other hand, often run from it, filling every spare moment with stimulation so we don't have to face what lies within. But in doing so, we remain strangers to ourselves. The remedy to a noisy mind is not to shut out the world completely, but to create a balance between engagement and withdrawal. The wisdom we have lost was not about escaping life, but about living it with intention. It taught that we should act when it is time to act, speak when it is time to speak, and be silent when it is time to listen. It reminded us that just because we can say something does not mean we should, and just because we can do something does not mean it is worth doing. In this way, they lived with a kind of discipline that was not rigid but purposeful. The ancient teachers often warned against being ruled by fleeting emotions. Anger, excitement, fear, and desire all create noise in the mind. If you act while your mind is clouded by these emotions, you will often regret it. The noisy mind magnifies emotions until they seem like absolute truth. But once the storm passes, the landscape looks different. This is why the wise waited for their minds to settle before making important decisions. They knew that clarity is not found in the heat of the moment, but in the calm that follows. Silence, in the old world, was considered an active force, not a passive absence. It was a space where truths could reveal themselves. Today, silence makes us uneasy. We feel compelled to fill it with words, music, or movement. But if we allow ourselves to sit in silence long enough, we begin to notice the things we usually miss. The faint rhythm of our breathing, the distant hum of life around us, the soft unfolding of thought when it is not being pushed. This is where lost wisdom lies, waiting patiently for us to remember it. It is tempting to believe that the noisy mind is just a condition of modern life, that with so much technology, news, and connection, it is impossible to be calm. But the truth is, calmness has always been a choice, and so has noise. We decide what to focus on, what to consume, and what to let go. The difference is that now, the choice is harder because the noise is more seductive. It comes in the form of convenience, entertainment, and validation. It promises us that if we just keep scrolling, keep clicking, keep consuming, we will finally feel satisfied, yet satisfaction never comes. Because the noise was never meant to feed the soul. It was meant to keep us from noticing our hunger. To reclaim the lost wisdom, we do not need to abandon technology, reject modern life, or live like hermits. What we need is to bring back the old practices in new forms, to take walks without devices, to write by hand, to spend time in nature without photographing it, to have conversations without glancing at screens, to wake up without rushing into the day, and to end the day with reflection instead of distraction. These are small acts, but they are powerful. Over time, they retrain the mind to be comfortable in quiet, to be unafraid of stillness, and to hear the voice of wisdom that has been there all along. The mind's noise will never disappear entirely, nor should it. Some noise is life itself, the chatter of friends, the hum of work, the music of celebration. But when the noise becomes constant, when it drowns out the deeper truths of who we are and why we live, then we must remember that there is another way to be, the way of the quiet mind, the way of the lost wisdom. It is still here, waiting for those who are willing to listen, not just with their ears, but with their whole being.